The Marlins and the Angels are reportedly interested in star shortstop Bo Bichette. So, should the Blue Jays revamp their infield defense? We'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside co-host Nick Gosse. Got a lot to get into today on the Bo Bichette front, but first I want to thank you all for the support that we've been getting. It's been unbelievable.
Yeah, it's been unreal. Quick reminder, 82.4% of you guys who are watching are not subscribed, so if you enjoy the daily content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It means a lot. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting video. Like you said, the Angels and the Marlins have shown interest in Bo Bichette according to a couple of articles, and let's just delve right into it. This one is, we're going to be mainly focusing on the Marlins with a bit touch on the Angels after, but this is from a Marlins article saying Toronto Blue Jays fans aren't high on Bo Bichette these days. His defense has been atrocious, negative .8 D-WAR. He also struggled offensively for a big part of the season. First half, he batted .257. Obviously finished strong. The Miami Marlins are looking to trade for hitting and to likely trade Pablo Lopez to get it. Even the Toronto media is talking about trading Bichette for starting pitching. Can a trade be worked out? Later in the article, it says the Miami Marlins may have a chance to acquire Bo Bichette. Just goes on to say how good Bo was. And they kind of gas up Miguel Rojas here, saying we need contact and hitting in general, so he would check a lot of boxes for us, talking about Bo Bichette. It also helps that he's from Florida and is an overall upgrade over current Miguel Rojas and his 2.5 WAR, with Bo having a 3.6 WAR. But before we get into any other stuff, what are your initial thoughts on this whole potential trade that they're talking about here?
Well, I like Bo Bichette. I've been very vocal about the Blue Jays needing strong defense up the middle because that's what wins you games in the playoffs. And I often reference 2015, 2016 when the Blue Jays had Troy Tulowitzki. So when they had Jose Reyes before acquiring Troy Tulowitzki, who's one of the greatest shortstops of all time, he was a little bit past his prime in Toronto, but he was still unbelievable defensively, sorry. So once they acquired him and got rid of Jose Reyes, they went from a 500 team to a team that was playing 600, 650 win percentage ball, which is what you need come playoff time. And he just made all the routine plays. He made it look easy at shortstop. He wasn't a Gold Glover anymore, but he was still so solid, and he gave the Jays a chance to win every time he was out there. So I've been very vocal about upgrading the defense at the shortstop position. I love what Bo Bichette does offensively, but a shortstop's number one priority is to play defense, and Bo has not really been getting it done at that position.
Yeah, you've been pretty vocal about that, and I tend to agree. I was hoping his defense would be better last year after having a couple of leagues in the MLB, a couple of years in the MLB, sorry. And it didn't really work out. Offensively, we know he's a stud. He's probably the best, or one of the best young shortstops hitting wise in the game. He has tons of value, and other teams, I'm sure other fan bases probably value him higher than Blue Jays fans, which is kind of funny. You can't say that for many young players, but because we see Bo play every day, and a lot of people are upset with his, hitting ability, his fielding ability. People get upset about it. But let's dive into a second part of the article here and saying, will Toronto actually trade Bichette? They basically go on to say there's a good reason for them to do it, talking about they need to extend Vladdy and Bo. So why would Toronto do this trade? They need starting pitching badly, and if they miss out on top arms in free agency, a trade with the Marlins is the next best thing. Talking about Pablo Lopez and his 3 WAR, which is only 0.6 WAR less than Bo. They talk about WAR a lot in this article. Pablo is controlled for one more season than Bo, but he should be cheaper to extend. And obviously, we can add Miguel Rojas and his Gold Glove defense, giving them a defensive improvement at shortstop. And we can also send Prospect or another arm their way. So they kind of go on to frame a trade. Now, we have a trade based on their framework, and then we kind of have a bit of a more outlandish trade based on our framework and what we think appropriate value would be. But it's really hard to evaluate. You're talking about a huge blockbuster league-changing trade here. So it's kind of hard. But let's just get right into the first trade that they kind of proposed here. Bo Bichette for Pablo Lopez, Miguel Rojas, and Eder. Now, we added the extra prospect. That is their 4th ranked prospect. And Peter, what are your thoughts on this trade? Obviously, the actual total value doesn't really add up, but it's a bit skewed for this. They have Bo really, really high, and they have a couple of the, Pablo and them low. But just looking at the players, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Well, at first glance, it's not enough, and I'm not just basing it off the value that we're seeing on that screen over there. They are overvaluing Bo Bichette a little bit, in my opinion. Like, for example, Bo's a 94.1 value, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a 38 value. So it they don't really correlate. I guess it takes into account years of control, your position that you play, so that would make more sense. But I like Pablo Lopez. I think he's a very good starter. I think I would need another prospect coming my way from the Marlins. I like Sixto Sanchez a lot. He's been hurt a lot in his MLB career, but he came onto the scene strong in 2020 in the shortened season, and he looked really good. So I think there's some more potential over there. I like their left-handed. I think it's
Peter.
Jake Eder, I think.
I don't know.
Yeah, Jake Eder. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it either, but he's 6'7" lefty, 225 pounds, throws hard. He's their fourth ranked prospect. And Miguel Rojas, I mean, the guy's just an elite defender. He doesn't hit much. He doesn't strike out much, and he would be a solid like 9 hitter for the Blue Jays. He's not going to match Bo Bichette's production. He's 33 years old. It's never going to happen, but he's going to make every single play at shortstop. And that's what you need in the playoffs. You need solid defenders. I think the Jays have a good enough lineup. And if they can shore up their middle infield defense, as well as add a top three starter, like a third or fourth rotation type starter, then yeah, I think it makes their team better.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting trade, and I guess talking about it, Miguel Rojas has a 2.6 D WAR last year, or had a 2.6 D WAR, and obviously Bo's was negative zero point 0.8. But quickly touching on the Bo versus Miguel Rojas, if you aren't familiar with Rojas, I'll pop up their baseball savant. So this is obviously Bo Bichette's baseball savant. Unbelievable hitter, average sprint speed, horrible defender. Seventh percentile outs above average with 47th percentile arm strength. 7th percentile outs above average is about as bad as you can get, and obviously shortstop is a premier position, so that is just not what you want to see. And let's compare it. This is not to hate on Bo Bichette. He's a phenomenal hitter. We said to evaluate him, but this is Miguel Rojas, horrible hitter, but a phenomenal defender, 98th percentile outs above average. Now, obviously, Bo Bichette is a much better player than Rojas, will be a much better player than Rojas for the rest of his career. However, Rojas is an unbelievable defender, and he doesn't strike out much. If there's any good, redeeming quality to his offense is that he does not strike out very much, which is obviously, a good sign. But yeah, the main difference here is you're trading offense for defense. If you obviously you would never do straight up 1-for-1 Bo for Rojas, but if you're getting back a starting pitcher and a prospect, like you said, it's a bit more, it's easier to imagine a world where that might go down. But yeah, Rojas, phenomenal defender, can't really hit. Bo, phenomenal hitter. But Bo has room to improve. He's still super young, and that's what we have to keep in mind here. He could turn into above average defender, just like Marcus Semien has late in his career.
Yeah, he could, but are the Jays willing to take that risk? Do they have enough time to figure out if Bo Bichette can become a good defender or an above average defender? I don't know if that's in the cards for the Jays right now. They want to win right now. They have George Springer, who's starting to age. They have Vladimir Guerrero, who they haven't re-signed yet. So your window is not closing, but it's starting to shrink. And I don't know if you can wait for Bo Bichette to become a good defender. You got to go out and get one. And another way that this trade could get a little bit better for the Blue Jays is if the Marlins add in Jesus Sanchez and Sixto Sanchez. Now, Jesus Sanchez is a center fielder, solid arm, he's pretty quick. He's got some power. He's a left-handed hitter. So that could be another piece that the Blue Jays look at. He's only 25 as well. And Sixto Sanchez, I mean, we talked about him before. The stuff is there.
Yeah.
He's dealt with a few injuries, but he's still one of the top 10 prospects in the Marlins organization, and I think he could revitalize his career here.
Yeah. It's a very interesting framework for a trade, and we'll quickly touch on one that me and Peter made up here, which doesn't really follow the Pablo Lopez framework,
No.
but it's another, just an interesting one to throw out there. This one is Bo Bichette for Chisholm and Luzardo. Now, the value is a bit, according to this website, is a bit, closer, and obviously it's a much different. You're still getting a starting pitcher back, but you're getting someone immediately to replace Bo Bichette, so you wouldn't have to replace him with Espinal, for example. And you have, obviously Chisholm's phenomenal, and Luzardo is a great pitcher. So this one might be a bit less realistic in the sense of pieces going back, but more realistic in the sense of a package that it might take if the Blue Jays are willing to trade Bo. And I'll let you touch on this trade, Peter.
Yeah, I would do this trade in a heartbeat if I was the Toronto Blue Jays. And Jazz Chisholm doesn't have the greatest arm at shortstop, but he's very rangy. He makes a lot of plays, and he's got a good glove. And Jesus Luzardo is 24 years of age, strikes out a lot of guys, had 120 strikeouts in 100 innings last year, and he's a lefty. The Jays need a lefty in their rotation. I don't know if the Marlins do this. It's a lot of value. I think Bo Bichette is a little bit overvalued on this website, and Jesus Luzardo is quite undervalued because lefties that throw hard and strike a lot of guys out and have low ERAs are not easy to come by, and that's exactly what Jesus Luzardo is. And Jazz Chisholm, he's also a left-handed hitter, so that addresses another need that the Blue Jays have. So this this could work out for both teams. Bo Bichette is obviously an upgrade over Jazz Chisholm and kind of catapults the Marlins into another area. I think they want to become serious. They have Sandy Alcantara, who's a Cy Young Award winner. They have Pablo Lopez, who's a solid pitcher as well, and they're just missing some offense. And Bo Bichette can address that. So maybe that could entice the Marlins to do this, but I love this trade if I'm the Blue Jays, and I'm doing it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and we'll keep an eye on it. Maybe they make a deal, but it's probably unlikely. At least, it's unlikely a blockbuster like that would occur, but we'll see. And we'll move into quickly the last bit of the video here, which is and this is from an article by the Angels, and the article is essentially one player from each MLB team that the Angels should target, and the player on the Blue Jays was Bo Bichette. They basically going to say that Bo is a name that's been discussed as a trade target recently. Bichette alongside fellow star Vladdy is under team control. Bichette's a great hitter. The downside is his defense. So it's kind of just, tooting the same horn we've been talking about, but this is from an Angels article. We don't really need to touch on this too much. I don't think there's a world where an Angels-Jays trade happens. It is interesting that the Angels might be interested in him, but I just don't see a world where that could potentially happen.
I mean, yeah, there's no one worth on the Angels worth trading Bo Bichette for. I mean, you're not going to get Shohei Ohtani. You're not going to get Mike Trout. So, I mean, the value just isn't there. We had an Angels trade in the previous video talking about I think I'm not sure. It was one of their left-handed starters coming our way for Santiago Espinal. That's more of a framework that would make sense for both teams, but this is not something that I would consider if I was the Blue Jays, unless Shohei Ohtani's coming our way, which he's not. They've made that pretty clear. So, yeah, it doesn't make sense for the Angels and the Jays to swap Bo Bichette for someone else.
I'm sure the Angels would love it, but I don't think they have the pieces. Especially, you never really know with the Angels. We don't even know what direction they're going. You'd assume they're not rebuilding. They're trying to keep Shohei, but I don't know. We'll keep an eye on that as well. And thank you guys so much for your support. We're close to 4K subs, so make sure to hit the subscribe button if you enjoy, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.